Life is tough. Would you agree? Which makes living fearlessly and living confidently kind of hard. And sometimes you wonder, well, is it even possible? And if you do get there, is it sustainable? Well, I think so. I think so. But it starts by realizing you can't do it all yourself, which is one of the things that Jesus, I think, was trying to tell us when he said in John chapter 10, I am the good shepherd. I think Jesus was trying to tell us, you are not alone in this. In fact, unless you wander off all by yourself, you are never alone in this. And you have God-sized help that you can lean into to help you through. Now I'm a city boy, and my up-close and personal experiences with sheep are rather limited. In high school, I was an exchange student to Australia, and they took us to a sheep station. So that was at least I had some observation of a modern operation. We took our kids when they were young to petting zoos, so I had some experience with sheep there. And one time, heading up to my in-laws, there was a herd of sheep crossing the highway, and we had to sit there and wait for like 20 minutes or something like that, which was not particularly fun. But other than that, my experience with sheep is limited to books and internet research and little kids' books, storybooks, and stuffed animals, and songs like I Am Jesus' Little Lamb. And really, other than the image of a little child holding that little lamb stuffed animal, there's nothing particular in that screams to me, you are not alone. And you have all the help that you need when you're struggling to live fearlessly and confidently. And that one of the keys to living fearlessly and confidently is actually living sheepishly. That sounds kind of counterintuitive to me, because from what little I know of sheep, they're not exactly fearless and confident creatures. But let's look at what Jesus' friends were probably hearing when he told them, I am the good shepherd. Although they were familiar with shepherds, they're probably not thinking that Jesus is comparing himself to the shepherds around them, because from most people's perspective in the day, shepherds were kind of like the animals that they tended. Silly, smelly, stupid, and sort of shifty. And they certainly wouldn't think that Jesus was comparing himself to that. But I think what they were probably hearing when Jesus says, I'm the good shepherd, is their minds would immediately drift to that famous Psalm of David that they memorized in Sabbath school, Psalm 23, the one that starts with, the Lord is my shepherd.
The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He restores my soul. He guides me in the paths of righteousness, for his name's sake. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil. For you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You have anointed my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and loving kindness will follow me all the days of my life, and I will dwell in the house of the Lord forever.
The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. By using that term shepherd there, God's trying to give us a picture of the very special relationship that we have with him. not distant or aloof, but close and personal and intimate. The kind of relationship that you need when life's beating down on you and you need to know that you're not alone and that you do have someone in your corner. Well, that's what the shepherd was for the sheep. See, the shepherd actually lived with his flock, and he knew his flock so well that he knew exactly how many sheep that he had, and he could tell them apart, even though to probably the casual observer, one sheep looks pretty much like the next one and smells pretty much like the next one. And he often had names for every single one of his sheep. And he'd call his sheep, and he'd call his sheep by name, and each of them, they responded to his voice. The shepherd knew his sheep intimately. And if the sheep didn't wander off on their own, and the sheep never had to feel or even be alone, which is exactly what Jesus wants us to know about the relationship that he has with us. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. Now that phrase, I shall not want, if you take that apart from the Lord is my shepherd phrase, it kind of doesn't seem to make sense. It seems to be a little bit off all by itself, because you look at your life or you look at your church and you say, wait a minute, I want lots of things. Not only do I want lots of things, I need lots of things. And not superficial things, not like, oh, it'd be nice to have it things, not the real expensive on the Christmas list sort of things, but real daily, I need this to get by sort of things. I want them, and I really need them. And actually, David, throughout his life, was in that space quite a bit too. I mean, David, looking back at his life, can certainly see and remember times of personal poverty, times of acute hardship, times when people were trying to kill him, times when his own son stole his kingdom from him, times many, many what you might call emotional and spiritual dark night of the soul times that he was wishing they'd just be gone, but they were just hanging around. So you can't say that David didn't have real needs, but David was also a shepherd, remember? And as a shepherd, David knew that the sheep survived those challenging times because of the shepherd. See, the shepherd was pretty much everything for the flock. He was guide, protector, provider, doctor. The shepherd led the sheep to good pasture in a land where sometimes good pasture was kind of hard to find. The shepherd found the sheep enough water where sometimes water was really hard to find. The shepherd defended against both robbers and wild animals, and both of those were abundant. The shepherd went after the sheep if they happened to get lost or separated from the flock, because if they didn't get found quickly, the sheep, it was likely a death sentence for the sheep. The shepherd nursed them back to health if they were sick or if they were injured. See, the shepherd did pretty much everything for the sheep. And the sheep totally depended on the shepherd, whether they realized it or not. And you know what? In the sheep experience, well, the shepherd pretty much came through all the time, every single time. And perhaps that's what Jesus is trying to tell us in this good shepherd analogy. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want, not because I don't have wants, and not because I don't have needs, but because Jesus offers me what I need more than anything else. A personal and loving relationship where I'm a name, not just a number, and a faithfulness and dependability to show up day in and day out and do what he says he's going to do. a faithfulness and dependability to show up and show that he's got my best interest at heart, a faithfulness and dependability to show with loving care that he actually provides, and the knowledge that because he's my good shepherd, if I happen to be in one of those stuck spots, that he's going to be coming to help me out. And even if I don't have everything that I want, isn't that everything that I need? And everything that I need to live a little more fearlessly and a little more confidently, even when there's some stuff out there that I'm still afraid of or have questions about? And before we go on in this conversation, stop and think for a moment about how that connects with your life right now. How does society define everything that I need? How do you? And how does God? Hit pause and think about that right now. As I worked through those questions, I came to the conclusion that what I need more than anything else is a relationship with Jesus. And that made me think about something else that I remember Jesus saying. Let me read it to you. Matthew chapter 6, verse 33. Seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness, and all these things will be added unto you. It seems to me as if the rest of that psalm is actually a commentary on that, and how Jesus wants me to see that no matter what life is throwing at me, that because he's my shepherd, I'm not alone. And that I'm never alone, actually, and that I, again, have God-sized help to deal with whatever I'm facing. Let's see how David develops that thought. Psalm 23, verse 2, he makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. Well, as you think about that, the pastures being food, the water being drink, doesn't Jesus talk about himself as being the bread of life? Doesn't he talk about himself as being living water? And isn't his word something that both feeds us and refreshes us? Doesn't communion, the Lord's Supper, do the same thing? And aren't those things that we need, especially when life is hard or confusing or draining? Perhaps that's why Jesus, who wants us to know we're not alone, actually, he says, makes me lie down in these pastures, commanding me, remember the Sabbath day, commanding me, don't forsake meeting together, commanding me, let the word of Christ dwell in you richly, commanding me, take, eat, drink, do this often. Like a good shepherd, Jesus is commanding me to slow down, to stay put, to pause, to rest, to eat, to be refreshed. And as I'm being refreshed there, to remember I am not alone. Doing that, he restores my soul. Now, restoration here is something that everybody needs, whether they know it or not. The Bible tells me that spiritually I'm like a sheep that's wandering off and somehow gets, actually turned upside down. And a sheep that's turned upside down can't right itself again, no matter what it tries to do. I need help, or I'm lost. In fact, not only lost, if I don't get turned back around, I'm dead. But Jesus is telling me that he comes looking for me, for wrong way people like me. Came looking for wrong way people like me and restored me, turned me right side up again, put me back in right standing with God by giving his life for me. John chapter 10, verse 11 says this. Jesus said, I am the good shepherd. The good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. And that's a grace word, a life-giving word, a forgiveness word. See, because just like real-life sheep, whenever I have those wandering tendencies, what this tells me is Jesus is going to come running after me, and and restore me and help turn me back to himself again. Next sentence in the psalm, he leads me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake, which I think perhaps is what Jesus was getting at when he said, John chapter 14, I am the way and the truth and the life. Not only is he the way, but because of my wandering tendencies, Jesus also continues to come close, and he kind of whispers in my ear through his word, and he says, go this way. All right, go this way. This is the right way. This is the best way. And things work out best for you on this path. Next sentence, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. Now that's the place, the valley of the shadow of death, when the sheep really need a shepherd. The phrase valley of the shadow of death literally means deepest, darkest valley. Now, death is perhaps the deepest and darkest valley of all, but it's not the only one. And you know, when you're in any of those deep, dark places, it really feels like you're alone. And like the world is closing in around you, and that nobody cares, and that you're not going to make it through. But you will. You will. Because Jesus wants you to know that you're not alone there. That you're never alone. Even in that deepest, darkest valley, I will not fear, for you are with me. Jesus said, I am with you always, even to the close of the age. Even in when you face death itself, because Jesus also said, I am the resurrection and the life. So even though we'd never choose to walk through those deep, dark valleys, sometimes we have to go that way. Sometimes we find ourselves walking through them anyway, and Jesus knows how scary that is for us. Because remember, Jesus himself has been through death, and he's lived to tell about it. And so instead of leading from like afar and saying, oh, come on, come through, no, Jesus, the good shepherd, when we're in those dark valleys, comes right alongside of us. Comes right alongside and whispers in our ears and takes us by the hand and escorts us through that place that we'd rather not go, but that he's already gone before, and leads us through it. Right? And that makes the difference. The Bible doesn't say that those deepest, darkest valleys aren't scary. It reminds us, I don't have to be so scared by evil, or by the evil one, or by any of his evil helpers, because you are with me. The risen Lord, the conquering Christ, the living God, you are there right by my side, because he's already defeated evil at Easter, so that it has no power to harm me forever, even if it can hurt me today. Now again, stop and think about that before we move on in this conversation. Because what dark valleys are you walking in right now? And where do you need God's presence to be a light for you in that dark place, or a comfort for you in that lonely place? And as you're thinking about that, then what hope and help is there in knowing that Jesus is actually there with you and comes alongside you in that deep, dark valley? Again, hit pause and take a little bit of time to reflect on that before we go through the rest of the psalm. The psalmist continues, your rod and your staff, they comfort me. Now, the rod was the shepherd's weapon. It was a strong, sturdy club that he could use to defend the sheep against any sort of ferocious enemy, beating them, whacking them, clubbing them, keeping them at distance, scaring them away, or so the sheep wouldn't be hurt or killed. And that's exactly the sort of thing that Jesus does for us. He protects us, he defends us, he fights for us, and ultimately defeats all of our enemies. And his rod comforts us, because that's what he uses to fight and defeat our enemies. And if we stumble and fall, well, that's where the staff comforts us. You see, the staff was the shepherd's tool to urge the sheep on in the right way, on that right path, to bring the sheep back, but also to pick the sheep up. I mean, the shepherd could even use that hook at the end of the shepherd's staff to literally pick a sheep up and get them out of a tough spot that they'd fallen in, or pull them back from a dangerous ledge they'd climbed out on. And again, that's exactly what Jesus does for us, isn't it? Which leads to the next thing that the psalmist tells us. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. Now think about what that picture says. In that picture, it's like your enemies can see you and you can see them, but they can't get to you. They can't get to you. They can't destroy you because the shepherd's around. The shepherd's around keeping you safe and secure so that you can enjoy the meal that he set out for you there. And you can rest and renew yourself in the meal that the shepherd's provided, knowing you won't have to run away. Won't have to run away because your shepherd's keeping watch and protecting and defending you from your enemies. And if you've gotten any wounds, you can also recover from those. That's what's behind the next phrase, you anoint my head with oil. You see, oil was something that the shepherd would use to soothe the wounds of the sheep, the scratches and the scars they might have gotten walking through those deep, dark valleys. Now, the ultimate healing, when all of our scratches and scars are gone, that's heaven, where there is no more death or sorrow or crying or pain. But Jesus is also talking about soothing our hurts in the here and now. And isn't that what the banquets that Jesus sets before us, like his word, like communion, like the gathering together as his people do? Isn't that what his tender touch has done for us? Isn't that what his word of forgiveness does for us? No wonder the psalmist writes next, my cup overflows. Not just because my cup in heaven will be fuller than I can ever dream or imagine and will never ever run dry, but also because I can start to experience it now. In the companionship and the presence and the love of Christ, even in the presence of my enemies. I think that's what Jesus meant when he said, again, John chapter 10, I have come that they may have life and have it more abundantly. And you know what? All those things that God is giving there, it never, ever stops. The psalmist concludes this way, surely goodness and mercy will follow me all the days of my life, and I shall dwell in the house of the Lord forever. Now that forever is really a comforting thought, isn't it? I mean, think about being forever making your home with God, not just like as a guest coming and going, but as a resident, not as a stranger, but as a family member, not for a little while, but forever. And forever because the Good Shepherd gave his life for me in order to bring me home. Knowing that's your future, that can really help you hang in there when life is tough and make it through the day, even when the day gets pretty dark. But again, that last phrase isn't just about the future. Right? It's also about now. Because remember, Jesus is wanting us in the midst of all this big life stuff that we're struggling with to know that we're not alone, that we're never alone, and that we've got God-sized help to deal with the stuff that we're dealing with every single day of our lives. Let me take you back into that phrase one more time. Surely goodness and mercy will follow me all the days of my life. All the days of my life, meaning the goodness and mercy of God is following me right now. And actually, it's even stronger than saying it's following me around. The Bible literally said here is that the goodness and mercy of God, the unfailing love of God, the faithfulness of God, the passionate persistence of God here to lead and feed and guide and guard and protect me and bring me home doesn't just kind of lazily follow me along. Literally, the psalmist says here, this goodness and mercy of God pursues me. It pursues me all the days of my life. It chases after me. It seeks after me. It runs after me. It surrounds me. It wraps its arms around me. It never lets me go. Kind of reminds me of something else I read in the Bible. Romans chapter 8. Nothing can separate us from the love of God that is in Christ Jesus our Lord. And that's not because I'm so strong. It's because the Good Shepherd is. And the Good Shepherd holds on tight. The Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. Jesus pursues me passionately with his love and his care. And who had ever thought that one of the keys to living more fearlessly and to living more confidently is actually living sheepishly, meaning staying close to Jesus and pursuing Jesus with the same sort of passion and reckless abandon that he pursues me with.